Hi, and welcome to another episode of InstaVision. I'm Glenn Reynolds. Well, she's a former news anchor for CNN and Fox and Court TV, and she's the author of such books as A Deadly Game and The Case Against Lawyers. Hey, wait a minute, that's me. But her new book is Patriot Acts. We're joined by phone by Crier, who probably everybody already knows. Great to have you here, Catherine.
Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry for the technological fail, but I'm glad that landlines still work.
Well, that's right. You know, it's a robust technology. So you say in your book that you're afraid these days. What are you afraid of?
Me? Oh, that's the greatest thing about getting older is you finally sort of lose all kinds of crazy fears that might inhibit us speaking out, inhibit action, all that sort of thing. But on a bigger scale, politically, I truly am afraid that Americans are rapidly abdicating their citizen democracy, and they're either oblivious or don't realize the kind of dramatic changes that could come if we gave up that citizen individual power.
Well, you say you have a platform in the book that you say sort of doesn't really fit either party very well. You want to sort of spell out the changes you think we need?
Well, both parties have basically been co-opted, bought and sold. Certainly, I have a lot of criticism in the last couple of, the last decade of the Republicans in their dominance and their control. But the Clinton administration demonstrated, a lot of the co-opting of Democrats. Certainly, that still is the situation on Capitol Hill. So my complaint is, that both parties are more beholden to the big contributors and more what I consider the corporate influence than they are the citizens, red and blue states, that actually sent them to Washington. And so certainly there are a lot of prescriptions in the course of the book. The most important, which people find relatively boring, unfortunately, is campaign finance reform. And that is Citizens United, the Supreme Court decision allowing corporations to get so legally integrally involved in the political process has got to be reversed. We have got to, I would prefer public financing of our campaigns so that our representatives truly spoke for the human beings from their states and districts that send them to Washington. I think that would be a dramatic change. But to do this, you also have to fix the gerrymandering problems in terms of our district elections, all sorts of procedural things. I think you have to fix a lot of rules and regulations in the House and the Senate where one party will change the rules to benefit them, like the filibuster rule and others, so they can pull off things that were never meant in the political system our founders established. And those are pretty obvious. And then there's certainly a lot more on each of the issues I discuss.
Yeah, one of the things you say that, I don't know, might shock some Republicans, although probably not so much the Tea Party Republicans, is you say Obama's not really that different from Bush in a lot of ways, and that the Democrats and Republicans are in a threesome with Wall Street, which I almost started to ask a question about that, but I decided to skip over any details and just say, are we going to ever get anybody who's not?
A little financial menage à trois we can discuss. Well, I don't think we're going to until we change where the loyalties lie. And right now, when you look at the reforms, for example, Obama took office, left all the Wall Street boys in charge of his economic advisory team, in charge of Wall Street reforms, and you can see how far we've gotten, which is not very far at all. I don't care whether you look at him in terms of national security, the surge in Afghanistan, keeping all the military personnel. Following that, he's deported more people. He's gone after more terrorists. The drone attacks in Pakistan. It just is amazing. His entire health care program was centered on copying Mitt Romney, a Republican, and certainly what the Republicans proposed as early as 91, 92, which was the individual mandate. So people can scream socialist, but when you look at his policies, a good number of them are right out of the Republican playbook.
Well, last question. Isn't the real problem not Citizens United, but Wickard against Filburn? And isn't the real reason why the federal government is corrupted by all kinds of interests the fact that the federal government has so much power it's worth corrupting? For example, look at me. Nobody bribes me. And the reason why nobody bribes me is I'm not worth bribing because I don't have any power. Back when the federal government had less power, it was less corrupt. Don't you think that power leads to corruption and absolute power leads to absolute corruption here?
Well, I do think that phrase is absolutely correct, but I think if you study history, you talk about when the government didn't have much power. This is one of the things that was really important to me in the book, and that is the father of American conservatism. Contrary to the positions Republicans take now, was Alexander Hamilton. And no one disagrees. His first act as Secretary of the Treasury was to round up all of the states' Revolutionary War debt so that the central government would control the economy. He demanded a liberal interpretation of the Constitution to find implied powers to let him build a central bank, centralize control. He believed in big government. Big conservative pundit George Will once said, "We build monuments to Jefferson, the radical liberal who believed in tiny, small government." He said, but in fact, we live in Hamilton's big, industrial, centralized government. So, I talk in the book how the conservatives were really the first to build out, and it was kind of that aristocratic, we want the elites to rule, we're going to centralize it in Washington, and, the peons, the common man, shouldn't be very involved. And I really take people through how the ideologies, liberal and conservative, developed, how they morphed and shifted, and how it got us into the various messes that we're in today with a good amount of criticism for both sides.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I have to say my favorite Treasury Secretary is Albert Gallatin, but I've always been a contrarian that way. The book is Patriot Acts. Buy it on Amazon or in fine bookstores everywhere. And thanks again for sitting in with us, Catherine.
You bet. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks all of you for tuning in. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, have fun on the internet. Thanks.